In prophecy, God tells us that his prophecies will be sealed and closed until the time of the end. Now is the time of the end, and these prophecies are being unsealed and opened. I am author and speaker Richard Perry, and this presentation will be on the third Jewish temple to be built, which the Bible indicates will be built before the return of Christ. One of the things I'd like to point out is that the Bible is quite clear that there will be a third temple built before the return of Christ. The Bible also said that Israel would become a nation again before the return of Christ. And for a long time, 1900 years, people thought that was impossible, that Israel could never become a nation again. But in 1948, that happened. Well, the temple seems like an impossibility today, but the Bible says it will happen. It will happen. The Bible records that King Solomon was the first to build a temple for God in Jerusalem on the Temple Mount. The first temple, Solomon's temple, was built in about 957 and lasted until about 586 BC, when it was destroyed when Babylon came against Jerusalem and conquered them. The second temple was dedicated about 515 BC, and this temple was the temple that was standing at the time of Christ. Now, at the time of Christ, King Herod was in the process of remodeling and making the temple a much more extravagant structure, which was completed a few years after Christ. And that temple was destroyed in 70 AD by the Roman army and the Syrians in that army. In 70 AD, when the Roman general Titus and his Syrian troops finally defeated Jerusalem and destroyed the temple, they fulfilled an amazing prophecy that Christ had made, saying that not one stone would be left upon another. When the temple caught on fire, the fire melted the gold off the wooden paneling in the temple, and the gold melted down into the stonework. The Syrian troops took every stone down to get the gold. So 2 temples have been built, but God's prophecies indicate that a third will be built. Of Jerusalem, God says, let it be rebuilt, and of the temple, let its foundations be laid. And then he says, I will give you the treasures of darkness, riches stored in secret places, so that you will know that I am Yahweh, the God of Israel. You might want to check my video on the Ark of the Covenant. There are several biblical prophecies about the existence of the third temple during the time of the end. In Daniel 9, he says that the Antichrist will confirm a covenant with many for 1 7. In the middle of that 7, he will put an end to sacrifice and offering, and on the wing of the temple set up the abomination that causes desolation. Paul describes that when he says he will oppose and exalt himself over everything that is called God, setting himself up in God's temple, proclaiming that he is God. Now, if Yahweh, the God of the Bible, says that there will be a temple during the time of the end, there will be a temple. Now, he doesn't say when it will be built, or he doesn't say on what position it will be built, but we should know that on the Temple Mount there is the Dome of the Rock, a Muslim mosque. There is room on the Temple Mount for the third temple to be built in the place that I've superimposed it here, if the temple is to be built adjacent to the Dome of the Rock. But if something were to happen to the Dome of the Rock, like a very large earthquake, or who knows, a stray rocket from Lebanon or Gaza or someplace that would damage the Dome of the Rock, then you might just place the temple right in the center. But my theory is that the temple will be located on the Temple Mount in line with the Eastern Gate, and you can check that out on my other video about the third temple. But rest assured that if the Bible says there will be a temple in place at the time of the Antichrist, during the time of the end, then there will be a temple. I don't know when it will be built or exactly what position it will have on the Temple Mount, but it most certainly will be a Jewish temple, the third Jewish temple, and it will be built in Jerusalem on the Temple Mount, and very soon.